This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
You are listening to the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, part of the CLNS Media Network. This episode is brought to you by Prizepicks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the Prizepicks app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, so we're recording this on Thursday, 12:30. So we don't have all of the details, but we have some details here, Greg, about some quick changes to the practice squad, it sounds like. G. Scott, Brandon Crossley, your guy Cam Riley, not spotted at practice today. There was a couple of new faces. Sounds like a couple of defensive linemen and a linebacker. Mike Reese was able to identify one of them. Apparently one of them is Fabian Levet, who is a defensive tackle. Entered the NFL as a UDFA last year with the Chiefs in 2024. 6'4", 315. Played in college at Mississippi State and Florida State. And he spent apparently all of last year on the Chiefs practice squad. So I would look at this. I don't know how you feel, but, you know, Brandon Crossley, it seems like you had a lot of corners. You've got 6 on your active roster, and you had, I think, 3 guys on the practice squad. So it kind of makes sense that Crossley's gone. Cam Riley, a little bit of a surprise just because of linebacker, which we've talked about. G. Scott, not much of a surprise. You agree, disagree? How you feel?
Yeah, not that surprised. I mean, I would say, I think you're right. And by the way, I'm surprised we're not leading with the Patriots' new nor'easter rivalries jerseys. I mean, because that's just burning up the internet and like, God, people like whatever. Anyways, yeah, I mean, they have, since they claimed Charles Woods from the Rams, they have before they made some sort of move here with Crossley, 9 cornerbacks. I would say out of the guys, so they brought back Miles Battle, Jakobi Meyers, and Brandon Crossley, at least in the initial wave. I would probably say that Crossley was my lowest rated one. Cam Riley, I know there was a number 46 the reporters were saying at practice today. I assume that's another linebacker, and it's really, I mean, I know RJ Moten wore that for the Patriots when he was here. That would be a surprise if it's him. But now you're getting into a situation where, it's just like waiver claims and deciding whether to put in a claim or not. Like, you're basically stacking the board. Like, so whoever they're signed, they look as like a slight upgrade over like Cam Riley, and that's fine. G. Scott is a sort of move tight end. Jaheim Bell was similar. He's also gone. I'm mildly surprised. I don't know if there's been any news on Jakob Johnson.
Yeah, he signed. He signed with the Houston Texans practice squad yesterday.
Really? Wow. I'm surprised the Patriots just didn't bring him here right away. But they could be looking at more of like a, H-back type of guy. But I wasn't impressed with G. Scott. I wasn't in charge with CJ Dippre, also who they brought back at tight end on the practice squad. But it's going to be this, especially where the Patriots are with their roster, whether it's the bottom, 3 to 5 spots on the active 53-man roster or the practice squad, it's churn and burn, baby. You're just looking to, make marginal upgrades in terms of talent as you go along, and you're hoping that by the end of the season, the 53-man roster is a little bit better and the practice squad is a little bit better, and you can roll those guys sort of into the roster, the 90-man roster for next year. But yeah, this is all part of the process.
The other thing I want to talk about regarding the practice today, Greg, is Christian Gonzalez still not practicing. Obviously, he's been out now for about a month. A week from Sunday, you kick off. Is it time to start thinking he might miss a game or two with this hamstring?
It's getting about there. Now, I will say the Patriots, after they practice today, they're off for the weekend. They're back on Monday. So they get Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, or at least to some extent. And yeah, it's getting about that time. I thought that Vrabel was asked about Gonzalez the other day, and I thought his comments were interesting. And he, basically said something along the lines of like, at some point, you got to get off the bike, which we have seen Christian Gonzalez do at practice. And I will add pretty vigorously. And you got to get on the football field. Now, one thing I wanted to mention about that, and I don't know if we've talked about this, we might have mentioned it in terms of the Vrabel discussion and him coming on board here. It's just something to monitor as we go on with Vrabel. He did have the reputation in Tennessee for occasionally getting guys into his doghouse. And sometimes it was about injuries and availability and things like that. And I'm not saying Christian Gonzalez is there right now. And I doubt that he'll ever get there because he's arguably the best player or the most talented player on the Patriots. But just something to monitor as we move forward with Vrabel.
All right, since last we spoke, obviously the Kendrick Bourne situation played out. According to Andrew Callahan, the Patriots were speaking with the Vikings about dealing Bourne to Minnesota. That thing kind of fell apart. Minnesota reportedly didn't really feel great about the information they were getting about Bourne's injury, so they moved on. They pivoted to Adam Thielen. Patriots also reportedly asked, again from Callahan, asked Kendrick Bourne to take a pay cut. Bourne said thanks, but no thanks. And now we know Kendrick Bourne is no longer a Patriot. Did you hear anything about the Kendrick Bourne situation differently or just your overall thoughts about what happened with him?
No, similar to what Andrew heard. I mean, I do find it interesting that Kendrick Bourne was not waived with an injury designation.
Yeah.
I mean, I figured he hasn't been on the practice field in weeks. So, I figured the injury is part of it. I guess they just didn't want him to revert to IR if possible. They could have reached an injury settlement, like all that stuff. I don't think, apparently they didn't want to go through that hassle. And, I thought that, or I know that Kendrick Bourne's place on the roster has been tenuous for some time. And, it was a little bit of a surprise that he was on the roster. I think with him, Duggar, and Anfernee Jennings, I think that the Patriots got to the point with these discussions with other teams where these other teams were calling the Patriots bluff. Like they weren't getting anywhere.
Yep.
I've heard that the Patriots were a little bit, or at least in the opinion of the other teams, a little ridiculous in what they were expecting as far as compensation and whether they would cover like part of Duggar's contract. But I view it as, I don't think it's over for any of them, as we saw with Kendrick Bourne. Anfernee Jennings was not on the practice field today either. I think this is going to keep going. But I do think that the Patriots kept them on the roster because we're not just going to give these guys away. And the other teams take the attitude that you get down to this and you're talking about possibly or trading a guy, that means you're going to cut him. And that's the case most of the time. But obviously the Patriots said, no, we're not just giving these guys away. They have value. And if you don't think we're going to keep them, well, we're going to prove you wrong. And maybe that moves trade discussions. Maybe it doesn't. But I think with certainly Bourne is already gone, but Duggar and Anfernee Jennings, I think this is going to be, I don't think this is just going to keep going and going. And I wouldn't be assured that they're going to be on this roster, certainly by the trade deadline and, maybe even sooner they could be off.
I mean, it makes sense for the Patriots because if you're the Patriots, it's not like, as we've talked about, you have a ton of depth. And, Duggar is an NFL player. He's a legitimate NFL player. His contract is obviously at this point an overpay. I thought it was a slight overpay last year coming off of 23. And then since the last year or so, it's absolutely an overpay now by a wider margin. Jennings' contract is very, very easy to deal with if you're a team. So, like, I don't disagree with the Patriots and how they're handling this. Like, you don't have to ask for the moon or expect the moon, but I'm not giving these guys away either when I can argue, hey, man, they're bona fide NFL dudes. They might not be the best fits right now with what we want to do, but they can help us in some kind of way. So if you want to try to call our bluff, then try to call our bluff. Brings me to Jakobi Meyers, all the trade talk. Obviously, Jakobi has requested a trade from Vegas. Vegas said, yeah, nice try. I don't know if Myers has gone back to Vegas and said, no, seriously, trade me, fellas. But just the idea of Jakobi Meyers to the Patriots, Greg, not asking you if you think it'll get done, but would you be in or out on Jakobi Meyers?
So I love Jakobi Meyers. Yeah, I think he's a perfect fit. He slides right into what the Patriots do. He's been with McDaniels in New England and also with Vegas, and he's been very productive. I was big on trying to trade for Jakobi Meyers like early in the offseason, free agency, before the draft, all that stuff. Now, not really. I mean, the reason he wants to be traded is he wants to get paid more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's great for him. Um, all of a sudden, I mean, if he say the Patriots did do the deal and they would have to give him a contract, I would say probably $15 million a year over like 3 years, probably, really a 2-year deal at 30 or something like that. All of a sudden he becomes your number 2 paid receiver on the team. But, who's he going to play over? I just think that the Patriots have way too many guys already that operate in the middle of the field that are possession type receivers. And I don't want to take snaps away from Stephon Diggs, Demario Douglas, Booty's earned snaps, Kyle Williams. I want to see more out of him. Efton Chisholm, you have him. And I would rather see him than at his cost than Jakobi Meyers. So as much as I love Jakobi and I know he'd be productive here, I just think it's too late. He would be too redundant here.
I think that's a very, very fair point. And I get that debate, that you got guys on this roster already and it's too redundant and everything you just said. I would still be in on him because I don't know what you have. I know you have better than you had last year, but I don't know if Efton Chisholm is going to be a true impact guy in the regular season. He could be. I hope
Right.
so. Pop Douglas, I'm still kind of concerned about his frame and how much you're going to use him. And he's not going to be out there an awful lot if you're running the football a ton because he's just not that kind of guy. Kyle Williams, I have high hopes for Kyle Williams, but I don't think letting him slowly develop and progress through the season is the worst idea. Diggs, I think, is going to be a 1-year guy here. I think Diggs, I think he's gone after this season. So if you give Myers and it's funny you said 2 years for $30 million because I talked about this in a lockdown episode earlier this week, and that's exactly where I landed, which was like 2 years, $30 million for Jakobi. If you give him that, then he's an immediate upgrade in the room. He's another adult in the room who can help the younger guys. He does have inside-outside versatility. He played, really good football for Vegas. I mean, he's not the same guy he was in New England. He's not. I think he's better than he was with the Patriots. 87 catches last year, 1,000+ yards. He did not have a single drop. And also, let's not forget, Diggs is coming off an ACL. And I'm optimistic about Diggs making an impact, but I mean, there is a scenario here where you look at it and say, well, Kyle Williams just ain't ready yet. Efton Chisholm was a nice story, but he might need another year to truly develop himself. You're not playing Pop a ton as much as you thought you would because you're going to try to run the football and you don't want him on the field for that. Diggs, in his 30s, he might be closer to hole 18 than we might have thought. So I don't think you're fully set at receiver. So if you tell me you can upgrade that room, cool. Like Kayshon Boutte had a good preseason. Does that mean he's going to catch 60 balls this year? So I just think there's still a lot of questions. So I would be open to it. I would not overpay though. I wouldn't overpay. I think like a 3rd, 4th round pick would make sense. I'm not going crazy for Jakobi Meyers. All right, let's
a couple things on that, Nick, real
Sure.
quick. First of all, yeah, I'm not dealing a 3rd round pick for Jakobi Meyers. I'm not, like, maybe a 5th. I mean, considering what people were getting traded for, so that's one thing. The second thing I would say is, remember, we've talked about this before, that I don't think the Patriots have a lot of petty cash left this year, considering they spent like $323 million in cash on this year's roster. And similar to that discussion, and we've had it before, I think where the Patriots are right now in terms of their roster, I'm more interested in seeing what they have and then plugging the holes that I need to later. And while I like Jakobi Meyers, like, for example, even if you wanted to add a wide receiver, let's say they get to the trade deadline and the Patriots are, they're in it. They're 500, but you could tell maybe there was an injury. Maybe Pop Douglas is down. Maybe you go for Jakobi Meyers down the line. Who knows if the Raiders would make him available, but you never know who's going to be available down the line. They could be out of it. You might get a guy, in the last year of his contract that a team is just like, oh, we suck and we need to rebuild and we're not going to pay him or whatever. And you could go and get, a borderline like 1 or 2, where I see Jakobi Meyers more like a 3. I just don't think that Jakobi Meyers on this team right now moves the needle that much. Now that could change depending on injuries later around the trade deadline, but I'm more interested in seeing what they have. And there could be bigger holes that you're going to need to fill on this team. Like, for example, if Robert Spillane goes down and you can't stop the run, and now what the hell are we going to do? And then you're going to be like, well, we wasted, we already traded a draft pick. We paid Jakobi Meyers money. Like, we don't have another out. And so I just think where the team is right now, I want to let it play out, and then we'll see what's what around the trade deadline.
I think there are ways to move money. I think the Patriots could move money around and play some games. You would really have to just deal with 1 or 2 contracts. You could mess around with it to create that if you needed to create it. I don't think that's, going up, climbing up Mount Everest with a refrigerator on your back. I don't think it would be that much of a big deal there. I would also say, this year to me, like, sun rises, sun sets on Drake May's development. And so I get the idea of let's see how these receivers go. But I also think of it in my head, again, what if these guys are not ready? What if Chisholm and Williams aren't ready for prime time? Matt Collins is a nice 4. By the way, I think Myers is at least a 2. I think to call him a 3 is underrating him severely.
At least a 2? You mean he's possible 1?
On some teams, I think he's better than some 1s in the league right now. I think he'd be the 1 on Buffalo.
Yeah, but if you want to be a real team, what is Jakobi Meyers?
A 2. I wouldn't call him a 3. I think he's a legitimate 2 right now. I think he's a top 25ish to 35, somewhere in that range receiver in the league. I think he's right around that mark. But to get back to my point, this season's about Drake May. And so this is what's fascinating, Greg. You and I have talked about this, where I think you mentioned it last week, and it was a great point by you. If you're Vrabel, like, how much are you trying to develop and look towards the future? How much are you trying to win right now? Because you got a lot of vets on this team, and some of the comments Vrabel has made about where he wants to be as an organization. And meanwhile, you've got a sophomore quarterback that the clock is going to start ticking by the middle of this year, because you got to make a decision by the end of year 3 with him. And so, I mean, if you go into this season and by week 6 or 7, you say, oh shit, we need another receiver, and you can't get one, you're letting Drake May hang out to dry a little bit. So that would be my concern, is you do get to 6 or 7 weeks, you give these guys a chance, but instead of going out and getting the known entity, you gave them a shot to show up. If they don't show up, what's that mean for Drake May for the next 10 weeks? That would be that, not even mentioning the offensive line. That would be my concern. And so I'd rather have the bird in the hand. But I think it's a great debate, because I also see your side of it. I absolutely do. All right. We're going to talk about Tommy DeVito, Charles Woods, the 53-man, coming up next. But first, Greg wants to tell you about Prizepicks.
Prizepicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prizepicks. On Prizepicks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports, combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, golf, auto racing, whatever. Prizepicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prizepicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prizepicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prizepicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS. Prizepicks, run your game.
Also, don't forget, those listening, we ask you that you subscribe to the pod, like and leave a review. For those watching the show on CLNS because you want to see more of the big boy, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel where you can find our show and a lot of other great Patriots content. Also, make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. Check us out as well over at BSJ. $50 for the year. Bedard and Giardi tag teaming on the Patriots with film and the best sources around. Tell me about Tommy DeVito, Greg. You in favor of bringing him in or what?
So I am, yeah. I like DeVito. I like his moxie. I think, in many respects, I mean, I don't think he's going to be an immediate upgrade over Josh Dobbs. It's sort of, which route do you go? Do you go as far as your third quarterback? Do you go some sort of developmental guy on the practice squad, which the Patriots could still do at some point, or do you put somebody on the active roster? If you claim somebody, then they have to go on your 53 at least for I think 3 weeks. I like DeVito. I like his makeup. I like the way he throws the ball. I like his athletic ability. We've seen him win games in the National Football League. I would say the one drawback that I have on DeVito is he's not very big. He's 6'1", maybe. I don't know what exactly was available out there. I mean, long term is sort of I don't mind having Josh Dobbs, and it's possible that DeVito replaces Josh Dobbs at some point, once he proves he knows the offense and all that stuff. But, I would really like to see a more similar quarterback to Drake May, at least in terms of athletic ability and build, so that if Drake May should go down and this other quarterback needs to go in, then not a lot changes. I think with DeVito and his size, a lot changes. If he had to go in, I would say, Dobbs is, closer in terms of May and height. But, I was in favor of it. It was a name I brought up. I thought it was interesting that he got cut loose in New York. And I'm happy with it.
He is listed as 6'2", 210 most places.
Yeah,
so
he ain't.
As Greg doesn't believe the 6'2". Look, the size a great point. I haven't heard that from really anybody else. So great point by you. I liked it. And, I liked it because I think you need competition for Joshua Dobbs. I think his ball placement in the preseason was at times reprehensible. I'll tell you, I don't know if I said this to you or not. I don't think I did, but I was watching the Minnesota broadcast of that preseason game. And man, oh man, that broadcast team went out of its way to talk about how Dobbs was dangerous to the receivers in Minnesota and how many times he put them in harm's way. And don't you know it, like 3 minutes later, he throws a high ball to Kyle Williams and dude gets concussed.
Which you're still bitter about.
I'm still pissed. Chafes my ass bad. Like you can't, if there's one thing that you can't do if you're a backup quarterback is go out there and put your guys in harm's way. And I've seen way too many passes already from Joshua Dobbs that give me a heart attack. And Drake does that every once in a while. The Travion Henderson's pass down the sidelines had nice touch, but it was borderline hospital ball. So I'm fine with it. The one thing I will say to all of my brethren in New England, stop with the North End jokes. Like the first one was funny. The 15,000th wasn't. Stop with the North End jokes. We know Tommy Cutlets, he's Italian. I'm Italian. Hey, cut the shit with the North End jokes. Charles.
A couple things real quick.
Sure.
I just looked up. So Tommy DeVito out of Illinois, I think via Syracuse. His pro day, he did measure in at a flat 6'1". I will say he has big hands, 10 and 1/8, which is actually a lot larger than Drake May. And on the North End thing, I mean, just get ready for it, Nick, because Tommy Cutlets is represented by Sean Stellato.
Oh, I know. Oh, yeah.
From Salem. He is, if you remember when he was there with his dad. He was always on camera. He's got the fedora. He's doing the Italian,
Yeah.
gestures. Like he already mentioned. I saw him. Sean did an interview, and I love Sean, and I've known him many years. Guy works his butt off for his clients, but I saw him already in an interview on NBC talking about like how, they already have a lot of connections in the North End. Like, I'm sure he's going to have some sort of promotional stuff in the North End, eating cannolis, whatever, like at, honorary chairman of one of the feasts. Like it's coming, prepare for it, and get ready.
Cranston, Johnston, Rhode Island are all fired up right now by that. They can't wait for Tommy Cutlets to show up. You talk about the North End. Don't forget about Rhode Island. It'd be like, Buddy Cianci with the marinara sauce back in the day. Let's go. The North End jokes were overwhelming my timeline when the signing happened. One more point I would make about this, and the same goes for Charles Woods, who comes from LA, who we'll talk about in a second. Connections. You and I pounded that last year. I think some people might have got bored with all right, we get it. Gerard Mayo doesn't have a lot of networking, doesn't it? It matters. And so, Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network came out, said the Patriots were interested in DeVito in 2023. Obviously, Elliott Wolf and a number of guys in the front office are still in New England. If you go back to 2023, you have the Ryan Cowden connection in New York. DeVito ran the Brian Daboll offense in New York, which has a lot of similarities to McDaniels. So connections matter. And Charles Woods from LA, cornerback, who also was picked up off of waivers by the Patriots, another connection from LA. And of course, you've got Stretch, who worked there last year. Thomas Brown knows a lot of guys on that LA staff. What'd you make of the Charles Woods signing?
Yeah, I thought that the Charles Woods, I mean, to this point, and we'll see what he becomes, he's been primarily a special teams player. And I think one of the things that I looked at with the Patriots roster in their initial 53 and Javon Baker, like putting them on there, basically because they didn't really have anybody to play gunner opposite Brendan Schooler, and Baker had done a nice job with that. But I sort of looked at that spot of, all right, he's here until they find a better special teams player. And, he's a little dude. He's just under 5'11", pretty light. Normally those guys sort of are more of slot guys. Marcus Jones has had problems with durability. We'll see, but I think he was mostly brought here to sort of round out the special teams and give them another legitimate gunner.
Yeah, I think, maybe it's just, I was talking about him on the lockdown thing. I was like, he has good size. And maybe it's just because I've seen years of like Jonathan Jones and Marcus Jones, but he's about 5'11". He's almost 6 feet. He's around 190. So he's not super tiny.
5'10" and 7/8, Nick.
But I think you're right about the gunner, the slot. It makes a lot of sense. He's Marcellus Dial, to me, like that role. And Marcellus goes down with the torn ACL. Marcellus was your gunner. Marcellus was going to be probably your sixth corner on this roster. Plays slot, can play a little bit outside. So I think that's what they were, that they were, no pun intended, gunning for. All right, before we get to the 53-man, we're going to run through that. I want to let you know, CLNS Media Network, Celtics All Access on CLNS for behind-the-scenes content, segments for many of Celtics podcasts for you. The NBA History Channel, the Patriots Press Pass, and, of course, don't forget Bruins Ringside. And shout out to our friends at Prizepicks. Download that app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, let's start with the offense, Greg. We'll look at your 53, and we'll look at who you missed on and what you got right. So quarterbacks, May, Dobbs, DeVito. DeVito is obviously the ad there.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I did a pretty good job on the offense. Defense was a little bit, different. The running backs we knew. The only thing I got wrong at receiver was Kendrick Bourne not going on IR. That was a in-season IR. That was just a guess. I mean, I did get Tavai right on that. Again, that was a complete guess. Obviously surprised that they initially went with 8. That has gone down to 6. Jack Westover at tight end made the roster. That was probably the guy that I put on and off the roster with each version more than anybody on the team. I like Westover. I thought he played well. He H-back, fullback role, blocked well, did a nice job on special teams, caught the ball when given opportunities in practice. I just questioned whether they needed to waste a roster spot on him. I figured they could have gotten him to the practice squad. They thought differently. That's fine. I think his, I guess not, considering that they didn't go for Jakob Johnson. I thought that his roster spot was tenuous to see if they could come up with a fullback. Pretty surprised that they didn't go with Jakob Johnson. But I've never been, I liked him in New England. I did not like Jakob Johnson on the Raiders. I thought he was a little bit overrated. And good for my brand. Got all the offensive line picks correct. I got 4 tackles. I got the 5 interior guys, including Caden Wallace and Cole Strange getting cut. So, not too bad on the offense.
Yeah, and of course, running back, you got Stevenson, Gibson, Henderson, which everybody felt pretty good about. Some had 4 running backs on the roster. I always had 3. You had 3. So good stuff by you on the offensive side. The O-line, I would just love 2 more vets. I know it's tough, but I would love a veteran offensive tackle because I'm not the biggest believer in Marcus Bryant being able to be thrown into the deep end and be ready. Like if something happens week 2, God forbid, to one of your tackles and you're throwing Marcus Bryant out there, that's a tall task. And Lowe's got the injury history and the inconsistencies. And then we still don't know if Ben Brown is, capable of playing guard consistently. And Caden Wallace is that transitional project. So I'd feel better if they had, a vet at each of those offensive line positions. But
well, Nick, what's interesting, and I just saw somebody tweet about this. One of my buddies, Howard Balzer, who's out in Arizona, covers the Cardinals, has been doing it forever. He just had an interesting nugget on Twitter, and this sort of goes to this discussion because I think it's interesting that on their practice squad, who they added was Jack Connolly, who the last practice I saw that he participated in, he was actually at guard. And they kept Mekhi Butler, who was really like one of the last guys on the offensive line in terms of getting reps all summer. Now, I do think there were times, and I think we talked about this, especially the first preseason game. And I want to say the last one, Mekhi Butler graded out well for me in the games. I didn't understand why they weren't giving him more chances. He started to get more chances. But what's interesting and what you bring up about veterans, Howard said in the first wave of official practice squad signings Wednesday, there were 114 veterans included. 5 teams had the max of 6. Falcons, Bills, Cowboys, Chargers, Commanders. The Patriots were the only team with none. That's interesting to me. And I don't know what to make of it yet because I just saw it once we started the podcast. But the Patriots are the only team in the league without a vested veteran on their practice squad. It's a little puzzling to me. I do wonder if that's more of a, maybe they might get there, but right now they want to churn through some younger guys to see if, and it could be about them being like, look, this isn't a 1-year thing. We're talking about the Jakobi Meyers possible trade. This is not just a 1-year thing for them. And they want guys that are young. They want to make sure that they're their guys, type of guys. So just an interesting note.
That is. It's a very interesting note about how they're structuring this team. And, we've talked about the depth. Maybe that's kind of the thought process is, hey, let's load up on younger guys because if we can develop them the right way, that's a cheap, easy, quick way to answer some of those depth questions you have and build that sustainability. I mean, I saw a note. And this is something else that I saw that I want to kind of dive into at some point on my own. But Washington has the oldest roster in the NFL. And, we always compare Washington and New England and how they've kind of tried to build those teams. And so it's just interesting, Washington, they better hit in their drafts because they're going to have turnover pretty quickly. And we know the Patriots made a lot of signings of guys who are 29, 30, Morgan Moses 34. So you start to look at that and say, you don't want to be in the commander spot next year being the oldest team in the league with the young quarterback. So that might be part of it as well. Get the younger guys in the practice squad, develop, and maybe they become a part of your 53 in 2026. All right, defensively, we can run through this quickly. Let's start with the defensive end and edge. We got Landry, Chason, Ponder, White, and Jennings. Braden Swinson was cut. Now he's on the practice squad. Truman Jones was cut. Your thoughts?
Who is also on the practice squad, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So I had Swinson and Jones on my roster. Swinson, I figured, as a 5th round draft pick, I figured they'd give him time. At least I will say their decision was totally justified because I didn't see him do jack squat this summer. I mean, it wasn't bad, but and he was one of those guys, I think, like that Greg Cosell mentioned to me. Of course, Joshua Farmer was one of those guys as well that Cosell really liked some of their later round picks, and including Braden Swinson. He thought he was one of the best pass rushers that he evaluated coming out last year, but it just, for whatever reason, it didn't translate. Truman Jones, I think if you remember sort of last time we talked before the 53, I was starting to wonder if I was overrating his impact in the games because he was by far the most impactful Patriots defender. I think I had him for 11 impactful plays. Elijah Ponder was next with 8. But I was just wondering, considering like I didn't really see him moving up all that much. Like, do the Patriots think that once against starters that it's not going to show up? And I think that ended up being the case. And one thing I wanted to also mention, and this can go to like defensive tackle discussion, which, I got right. And I know, of course, Tony Maz, those guys take everything out of context. When I mentioned Javari Ritzy and David Olajiga on Felger and Maz, it wasn't that I was saying that they were making the team. I just thought they did a good job. I thought that they look like potential NFL players to me, and that they would they would be good practice squad candidates, which they are both on right now. But to that no veteran on the practice squad thing, like Kyle Petco, who they cut early, but I thought did a nice job in the games. Like, this decision to not put any veterans on the practice squad, where that's kind of a negative and you run into a little bit of an issue, but maybe they think they have time. They're trying to give some of these younger guys just an extended tryout. Maybe next week we see them sign some veterans to the practice squad.
Yeah.
Normally how you use those veteran spots, it's like, all right, well, we don't have a ton of depth, or maybe we want to keep a younger guy. But like, for instance, if at defensive tackle, say with Josh Farmer, say they like his potential, but they don't think, like, if there's an injury, they don't think he's quite ready, which could be the case. They'll be like, well, we have another layer on the practice squad where we can elevate him twice before signing him to the active roster. So right now the Patriots don't have any of those guys. Be interesting to see if that'll change, because I do think that's it's sort of a layer of security that you can have on the practice squad. I think you can have 4 veterans or something like that. But as of right now, the Patriots aren't doing that at all. I'll be interested to see if that changes.
Yeah, another spot would be off the ball linebacker, where we've talked an awful lot. To have some veteran presence there might be a good idea. And again, there is a linebacker at practice today. We don't know who that was. Cam Riley was not there, so maybe they did bring in a vet linebacker. We'll see. We'll see who that mysterious man is at some point today. But, Spillane, Ellis, and Gibbons, not too many surprises here. You nailed the Tavai thing. And Marte Mapu, who had a good game against the Giants, making that transition to linebacker. Certainly, Mapu is critical because he might be the only dude on that list of linebackers that could be capable of covering. So Mapu all of a sudden becomes pretty important to me for this defense.
Yeah, and they could be important week one, depending on how they want to handle Brock Bowers and Michael Meyer, the tight ends of the Raiders. And we know all about Brock Bowers. If he's not the best tight end in the league already, he's certainly one of, and a very dangerous weapon. And the Gonzalez injury to me factors into that. I mean, I would think about matching up Gonzalez against Brock Bowers, at least in passing situations, because, the Raiders rely on Bowers so much. But to me, the off the ball linebackers for the Patriots, I think this is arguably their worst group on the team. I think Spillane is legit and a good, solid player. I don't think he's much more than that, but Ellis, he's all right. Mapu, I don't think he's close to proven that he can be a linebacker. He's had some moments this offseason. I picked Cam Riley over Jack Gibbons for a little bit more potential. I think Gibbons is slow. He's a veteran. I think that the Patriots went with more comfort because he knows the scheme and all that. I don't love it. Tavai, also a guy who can't run. Good player, smart player. I'll be interested to see who they bring on the practice squad if they let go of Cam Riley. I would like to see another veteran because like I said, I don't think this group is very good. I don't think they have any depth, and an injury to Robert Spillane could, basically make the Patriots a donut on defense with nothing in the middle. But we'll have to see how that goes.
Pro Football Focus before camp loved him, called him a top 5 linebacker unit for what that's worth. Look, a lot kind of hinges on Ellis, right? I mean, because if Ellis can play decent football, if he can end up being pretty good, you've got Spillane, you've got Ellis, and you've got Mapu as kind of the coverage guy. Tavai comes back. He can give you a little bit of versatility, play some on the defensive line if you need him to. So to me, it's kind of like Ellis. If Ellis ends up justifying that contract and, fulfilling some of that potential, I don't feel as bad. So I guess we'll see if Ellis can do that. The question still exists because he played about 500 snaps last year. So let's see him on a team that actually wants to win and is coached well. We'll see how he plays. Cornerback, safety, not many surprises there whatsoever. Do you have any thoughts on the secondary, or pretty much spoken for?
So the only thing I had Miles Battle as the 6th cornerback. Again, you could have flipped a coin between Minor, Crossley, and really, Isaiah Bolden before he was released a little early. I wanted a 6th cornerback. They now have a 6th cornerback with Charles. I want to keep. Is it Charles Woods? I want to keep.
It's Charles Woods.
Charles Woods. So, I mean, really, you could have gone any direction there. Safeties, I ended up, keeping Duggar and Pettis on the roster, releasing Marcus Epps, which the Patriots ended up doing. I didn't think Epps showed anything. He is coming back from ACL surgery. Kind of surprised that the Eagles, did they claim him or sign him to the practice squad? I don't know. But he's back with the Eagles. And yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. I mean, I like their group. I thought Duggar earned a spot with his professionalism and also what he showed in the last game. And I like the safety group. We'll see how it evolves and whether Duggar is here long term.
Last question for you. Kicker.
Mm-hmm.
Borregales makes it over Romo. If Romo was the draft pick and Borregales was the guy that was signed off the street, do we have the same result?
No. If Parker Romo was drafted, he would be here as the kicker. I thought that he won the job. Now, it was close. It wasn't a no-doubter. But I'm a little bit disappointed in this because from this perspective that, Vrabel preaches competition. He talked about the competition, all summer. In my opinion, there was never a competition. Romo made more kicks than Borregales, and Borregales got the job. So next time Mike Vrabel talks about a competition, especially with a draft pick going against somebody else, then I don't know how much I'm going to believe Mike Vrabel.
The next time we speak to you, we will be getting ready for week 1 against the Raiders. So everybody, enjoy your Labor Day weekend. Stock up the fridge. Get ready because football season is upon us. He's Greg. I'm Nick. We'll talk to you soon.